Good morning. It's Tuesday, October the 4th, and this is another edition of the Kitchings Table. Good morning. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings. As always, glad to be with you. Hope you're glad to be with us, and we're looking forward to, as always, bringing you something different, something new, something educational, inspiring, humorous, whatever it might be, to make your Tuesday morning well worth the effort for getting out of bed and getting on track for another day of what's going on in your world. So we're happy to be here on WBISLP 106.9 FM, awesome radio, as you may know. We're always glad to be with you here on YouTube also, Facebook Live, Roku, and GPAC 23, whichever platform suits your purposes. Hopefully, we can suit what we're doing for you. So let's get right into our show today. And our question before we get into what our topic is when you normally think about taking a vacation, where or what location do you seek out to make that trip, that vacation happen? Is it something here in the United States, something in Europe, something in Asia, something in India, wherever you might want to go? Or is it one of those tropical locations on the islands? Well, today, our topic is island places. Island places. And it has to do with not just places you go for that great vacation, that great experience of being in a tropical environment and just being relaxed and doing nothing, or just being lazy and having someone wait on you hand and foot and bring you things, or just an opportunity to explore and see things that you have not ever seen before or have heard about. But island places, we're going to take you around the world and talk about some of the most interesting places that are called islands. And one in particular, we're going to shock you with. And you probably don't think about it from this perspective, but it definitely is an island. So let's get into our show today, island places. And I guess the first question you may ask is, well, what is an island? And if you were paying attention in your geography classes when you were going to school, you knew that an island was a body of land completely surrounded by water. And as is stated here on the internet, an island is a landmass permanently above sea level, either in an inland waterway or in the open sea. It is completely surrounded by water, but must not be a continent. Therefore, the place that I think is an island, they say it's not, but technically it is, because it is a large body of land surrounded by water. The distinction is it's a continent. So based on their definition, Australia is not considered an island technically because it is a continent. So that makes Greenland the largest island in the world. Many countries interpret the term slightly different. In general, when we speak of an island, we think it's something big enough or tropical enough to identify it. But in some places, the terminology changes. Whether an island is really inhabited or at least inhabitable is irrelevant for the definition. It doesn't matter. People live on it or don't live on it. If it's a body of land surrounded by water, it's an island. Now, islands aren't created by man. Islands are not created by man. And then if you take the term keys, for instance, in Florida, they have Key West, which keys, those are actually reefs. Those are actually reefs. And you know, some reefs are man-made. So when we talk about islands, we talk about that body of water surrounding that piece of land. Of the approximate 900,000 islands in the world, 900,000 islands in the world, about 16,000 are inhabited. Approximately 11% of the world's total population, over 730 million people, lives on these islands. Now, over in what they call the Middle East, or perhaps for a more clear understanding where I'm speaking of, in the Persian Gulf, in the area under the United Arab Emirates, the coast of Dubai, they have what they call the World Islands. And the World Islands are an archipelago of small artificial islands constructed in the shape of a world map. So what they did was they created and built some islands. They dug up the sand out of the ocean and just recreated so that it could be above the water level, but they made it in the shape of a world map. And these are called the World Islands. And they are located in the Persian Gulf, off the coast of Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. If you get a chance to go to Dubai, I'm sure you'll get a chance to see the World Islands. So again, when we talk about islands and we talk about how they are formed or where they are, a lot of islands were created from volcanic eruptions that rose up from the ocean and basically found themselves scattered throughout. Tropical islands are formed from organic material of stony corals and other organic debris. Other organic debris. Now, it doesn't say what all that is, but something out there in the ocean makes it organic, which means it has life to it, I guess. And then we talk about other islands are unsubmerged parts of the continental shelf, the shallow edge of a continental landmass. So when we think about where you live, what places you have visited, what islands you've gone to for vacation. Of course, here on the East Coast near Florida, we are surrounded by several islands, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominica are the islands that are near the state of Florida. As you know, the Bahamas are just southeast of the state of Florida, probably not even 50 miles away. If you take a cruise there, it's interesting. You'll get on a cruise and it seems like you won't get to the Bahamas. If you leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they won't get you to the Bahamas until probably late that night or the next morning. And the Bahamas are not that far away. Cuba is within 90 miles of the southern part of Florida, Miami area, the Florida Keys, Key West. It's only 90 miles. And you go a little bit further, you run into Haiti, Dominica, Puerto Rico, and just a little bit further south of that, south of Cuba, you will find Jamaica. Now, those islands probably broke apart millions of years ago. They probably used to be connected, and then Earth, Mother Nature erupted, caused them to break apart. If you look at some of them, you can kind of see how they might fit. Cuba looks like it might have fit on the western coast of the state of Florida at some point in time before it broke off and just drifted out there. But they're all out there, and they're all parts of what we are very much enjoying when we go to the islands. So when you think about other islands around the world and you think about what's going on with them, you can kind of figure out that, you know, some of them are very, 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 very large, very large. As I said, Greenland is considered the largest island in the world. Technically, like I said, Australia would be considered an island, although they say you can't consider a continent an island. But Australia is surrounded by a body of water, Pacific Ocean, as is its neighbor, New Zealand. And then you go a little north in the Pacific, and you run into Japan. And then you go a little bit further, depending on where you're coming from. If you're going west, you run into Hawaii. If you're going east, you run into Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands. So there are a lot of islands throughout the world, and we have a list of the countries and the number of islands that are under their domain or under their governance. And it's amazing that some of the places that you may not think to have islands have them. And we're going to touch on just a few of them. We're not going to go through the whole list. It's about maybe 30 to 40 of them. Just going to touch on some of the ones you know and some of them that you might be surprised to know before we get into the islands that are what we call sovereign states, which basically means they are their own country or they have their own domain. They may be governed by another country far away, but for the most part, they are autonomous. So heading up this list of countries that have islands is Norway. Norway, according to this list that we found on the internet, has 239,000 plus islands. 239,000 plus islands. Followed by Sweden, which has 221,000 islands. Now, I don't know how they came up with these numbers, but they're fascinating. Canada has 52,000 plus. Finland has 40,000 plus. The United States has 18,000 plus. And if you don't know it, the Virgin Islands, which are United States territory, which are islands, are part of the United States. Indonesia has 18,000 plus islands. So those are the double and triple digit places where you will find the most islands and the most landmass for these islands. Then you go into Australia, the Philippines, of course, Japan, China, South Korea, Cuba, Denmark, Saudi Arabia, Croatia, United Kingdom, England. You know, England is an island. Yeah. Greenland, the Falkland Islands. Turkey has islands. Venezuela has islands. Ireland has islands. Colombia, not Colombia, but Colombia, down in South America. Italy, Bermuda. You know, so all these little, you know, if it pops out of the water and has, I don't know, it could be 1 mile square, they would call it an island. So, you know, pieces of, as they say, landmass and other organic materials pop up and make for all these islands. And again, it's not that they are so much inhabited, but they're considered islands. With a worldwide network of satellites, countless shipping routes, and radar stations, one would think that the number of islands would not change. However, volcanic eruptions will emerge and cause things to change. So it states here that Norway increased the number of its own islands to 240,000 plus. And photos have now shown that this number is more than they had before. The Philippines has gone from about 7,100 to now it's at 7,600 islands. So that just goes to show you, I guess, in one respect, how large this place we call Earth is. In the large equation of our universe, we are a very small planet compared to others, Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter. But in the scheme of things, as we are this blue marble in our solar system, which means we have life on it, unlike other planets that don't. And as you continue to read or see in the news that the United States is continuing its efforts to venture out, but there's only one planet in our solar system that we know of that has water and air on the planet where you can live without some type of apparatus to keep you alive, and that's Earth. So we're going to talk about the island nations that they call sovereign states. And the first one that heads the list with a population of 258 million is Indonesia. Capital city is Jakarta. And it is located in Southeast Asia. And it has about 13,000 islands. The next sovereign state is one we're very, very, very familiar with. It has gone from just being an island to a global economic power. They basically have stopped trying to be a military power because they found it more engaging to be an economic power on this planet. And what planet is that? That would be Japan. Now, when I was growing up, the one knock that Japan got was that was where you bought very cheap, inexpensive products. If it said Japan on the label, you took it as being cheap and not worthy. It's not going to last long. It's not made very well. Well, that has changed. And that primarily has to do with, I would say, at the top of that economic chain will be two companies, Honda and Toyota. And all the electronic companies that have spun out or spun off from being that power on that island nation, Japan. Capital city, Tokyo, population 126 million. Four main islands in the Japan sovereignty. And then it has about 6,800 smaller islands and islets. Islands, islets. So here they are in the Pacific Ocean, not too far off the coast of China. Just an economic power. They pretty much had their island destroyed during World War II. They rebounded and decided, hey, you know what? Forget that hard stuff and playing ball with bombs and atom bombs and things of destruction. We're going to become this economic power and produce some of the best automobiles, some of the best electronic products in the entire world. And we're going to stand on the fact that we build these great products, because no longer will we engage in war. They still have a military, I'm sure, but nothing like what they had during World War II and what they were trying to achieve. They decided after the destruction of an atom bomb was dropped on their island that no more of that. So the next sovereign nation on the list is the Philippines. And Manila, it's the capital city, and 100 million plus people live there. More than 7,000 islands are on that group. Again, located in the Philippine Sea and the South China Sea. The next island sovereign state is called the United Kingdom, basically England, but they have some other so-called countries under their domain. Capital city is London. 66 million people. Two great islands, the Great Britain Island and the island of Ireland. Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom. Although they're their own country, they're still under the United Kingdom. Then there's Madagascar, Antananarivo is the capital city. 21 million people live there. The fourth largest island in the world. Sri Lanka, Colombo is the capital city. About 21 million plus people live there. States here, the island connection to India mainland, but mostly now it's submerged in the Indian Ocean. The next sovereign state is Cuba. Havana is the capital. 11.2 million people live on that island. It is the largest island in the Caribbean, followed by Haiti. A country that's just continuously devastated by physical trauma, economic trauma. If ever there was a country that cannot get economically great footing, this would be one of them. Port-au-Prince is the capital city. About almost 11 million people live in Haiti. And it says it's one of two countries occupying the island of Hispaniola. And Hispaniola is at the western portion. Haiti is at the western portion of the Hispaniola Islands. Again, right in the Caribbean, not too far from the United States. Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo, about 9 million people live there. Again, one of the Hispaniola Islands. Then you have Papua New Guinea, and that is near the United Kingdom, New Ireland, New Britain, Bougainville area. Singapore, again, on the eastern portion of near China and India. New Zealand. Interesting enough, the country is Singapore and the capital is Singapore. 5 million plus people live there. New Zealand, Wellington is the capital. Two long and narrow main islands and several outlying islands. It's about 1,000 miles away from Australia. And then we go back to the Republic of Ireland. About 4.6 million people live there. Then we go down to Jamaica. Kingston is the capital. Dublin was the capital of Ireland, but Kingston is the capital of Jamaica. About 2.7 people live there. And then we get to the Bahamas, where Nassau is the capital. About 370,000 people live on the Bahamas. And they say the largest islands in the Bahamas are in the Bahama system. Because if you ever look at a map, and that's what you need to do. You need to go look at a map. And again, our geography lesson today teaches us that if we just go look at either a map in a book, a map on a globe, we can, maybe not so much on a globe, you won't see all the islands, but definitely in a book, you can just see how these bodies of land are just scattered all over the place. And it's interesting that they are inhabited. All the islands I just read off to you, although they have outlying islands, their primary islands are inhabited. So you got to think about when you go to these places, just what they're all about. Most of them are there for tourism is their number one industry. Without tourism, for the most part, they will struggle economically. Once again, Haiti probably does not get very much tourism because it's a country in flux with violence and scams and everything else. But most of them depend on the tourism trade to keep their economies going. And we don't think about it. Unlike here in the United States, where goods and services, but particularly goods, are transported every day, East Coast, West Coast, north to south, via trucks or train. That's how most of our goods and products get to us, by truck or by train. For islands, they depend on the shipping industry to get products that they need, for the most part, to them. Ships are going in and out of these islands on a regular basis, taking necessary products and other type goods to these islands that they can use to sustain themselves. So the next time you are traveling and you are on the island, have a good time. Have a great time. Have a great time. But just think about some of the geography we spoke to you about today and how that affects that island and what's going on there. And again, like I said, tourism affects that island very much. But just to know that they're dependent on the countries that are close to them for goods and products. And I'm talking about basic things, even vehicles, housing materials, health materials. Hospitals depend on the countries that manufacture those things to send back and forth. The purchasing power of these countries has got, just to track that on a daily basis has got to be a mind-boggling thing, because again, this stuff is just coming in day to day. Every day, ships are coming in. And when you talk about the shipping industry, the freight containers that bring all that stuff in, if you're wanting to be in business to some degree and you want your products to get from point A to these islands, may not be a bad business. So those are the islands that are sovereign states. Those are the places that we have heard of. There were some other places on that list. I did not put it there because I didn't want to go through a lot of countries or sovereign states that you've never heard of. Wanted to just touch on the ones you know of and are aware of. But keeping in mind that there are 2 European countries with the most amount of islands in their governance. So we're going to talk about the largest islands today in our pantry section, the largest islands in the world. And going back to what was said earlier when we opened the show here on WBISLP 106.9 FM, the station to catch the Kitchings Table every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Roku, Facebook Live, YouTube, GPAC23, other platforms that you can find us. But always catch us on WBISLP 106.9 FM, awesome radio. I'd like to thank the folks who manage that station and keep it going each and every day. Would like to thank Miss Akila Thigpen for all the work she does as a rising media mogul in the media business. She's going to be one of the best when she gets to the top, guarantee you that. But we're going to talk about the largest islands in the world. and there are a few of them. And we're going to go back to what I said earlier, because in an article by Don Vaughan, the comment that's written is that Australia is technically an island because it is not connected to any other body of land. And of course, it is surrounded completely by water. It is the smallest continent at 2.9 million square miles, or 7.6 million kilometers. However, if you considered it under the definition of what an island is, it would be the largest in the world. And we go back to saying that because a trivia question I asked kids in elementary school, what's the largest island in the world? And I had one young lady did research, found out, and she came back and she gave me Greenland. And I had to say, like, well, yes and no. Because technically, when we just keep it simple for kids, just keep it simple. They'll learn about the distinction later on. But when we just talk about an island being a landmass just completely surrounded by water, technically, Australia is the largest. And that was what I was shooting at, because giving her that, and then she came back with Greenland, it's like, okay, she did her homework. Because Greenland is the largest island, technically, if you factor out it's not a continent, on the planet. And what it states here is Greenland is 3 times the size of Texas, and it is a part of Denmark. Now, we told you about, and that's why Denmark has all those islands associated with it, because when you take in the number of islands surrounding Greenland, it ups the number. And if you didn't know that Greenland was a part of Denmark, you'd be like, how could that be? But Greenland is a part of Denmark. So it is a very large island. It is a very cold place because it is located northeast of Canada. So, anything north and or east of Canada, or north and or west of Canada, is going to be very cold. It's going to be very frigid. But anyway, it's inhabited just like Alaska, the North Pole, North Canada. You have people who have lived and sustained themselves in that cold, cold weather for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. Indigenous people have lived in that climate and have survived. Next, we have New Guinea. And of course, New Guinea is in the Southeast Asia region. It's 317,000 square miles. Then you have Borneo, and they are crediting Borneo with an array of flowers. It's about 288,000 square miles. Madagascar, 250 miles off the east coast of Africa. It says it nearly has 40 species of lemur, the little beautiful kind of gray animal with the ringtail, and 800 species of butterflies. Can you imagine 800 species of butterflies? But you go to Madagascar, you'll find them. Baffin is next, 195,000 square miles. Then you go down to Indonesia, Japan, Great Britain. Great Britain is only 80,000 square miles in size. And that gives you a good idea of how big these islands are, and just how well, for those of them that have industrial progress and industrial things going on, that the island provides well for its people, and it provides for other parts of the world. Not everyone is industrialized. Some are just agriculturally driven, as we stated with the countries that provide the flowers or butterflies, things of that nature. And the people who live on these places probably go back generations. And I'm sure if you just had a conversation with them, they would probably make your visit to those places all the better, because they can tell you about many, many, many things that you probably aren't aware of. And that's the beauty of these islands throughout this world, throughout this planet that we live on. Now, when we talk about the islands, one of the continents, and it's probably, if you technically look at it, and if it is not connected to some other part of another landmass, would be Antarctica. Do some research and find out if it is or isn't. If it is not attached, and the reason why we don't talk about it a lot is because it is at the bottom of the earth, on the South Pole. It does not get that much sunlight. It is very cold there, very windy there. But again, when we're technically talking about places that are surrounded by bodies of water that are islands, I'm going to venture to say that Antarctica might get very close to being technically an island. But again, it may be connected to some part of South America at the very, very, very tip of South America. And, you know, imagine being at the very, very, very tip of South America, close to the South Pole, as are the people on the North Pole with being close to Canada. Interesting enough, the top and the bottom of the earth are just a lot of ice, because as our blue marble rotates around the sun on a day-to-day basis, those parts of the planet don't get much sun. And probably the North Pole gets more than the South Pole, simply because if you got a ball in your hands and you tilt it a little bit and then you just take it around in a circle, you kind of see what I'm talking about. But all in all, you know, you want to think about these islands and their impact on the world stage, who they are and what they do. And visiting them would be a beautiful thing. Go to Australia, go to New Zealand, go to Hawaii, visit China. Go to the places that are first and foremost safe for you to go to, and then the ones that would be interesting. Of course, everyone, not everyone, but most people enjoy maybe going to Hawaii. Most people like going to the Caribbean. You know, the island that sits out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean almost, that island that has the myth surrounding it, may not be a myth, because the documentation of it shows that the Bermuda Triangle, which is off the coast of the island of Bermuda, things go in, but they don't come out. So Bermuda sits out there in the ocean. I'm told it's a very beautiful place. But think of how many ships have to take products and goods to that island on a regular basis in order for it to have sustainability. So when you go to these places, take it all in. Be a little bit more critical about what you're looking at, because there are some nuances to these islands that, what can I say? If you don't, you'll probably miss out on something very, very inspiring and educational. That is one of the things you should seek out when you go to some places. Not only their tourism values, but their historical values, their values of what they are and what they've been, uh, who's governed them. When we talk about who's governing islands, for the United Kingdom, they've had islands all over the world. If you look at the flag of New England, of the United Kingdom and Australia, they have flags that are similar. Then when you look at the flag of New Zealand, it is similar because of a portion of it. And during the days of explorers back in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, when countries were using ships to explore and capturing islands and countries, this was just normal. Europe would leave out with ships, sail out in the oceans and discover new lands and capture them and claim them. Although people were already living there, i.e. the United States, people were already living here. Native Americans were already here, but some kind of way they say, you guys got discovered. So think about that. Even down in Mexico, the explorers say you've been discovered. But all in all, the people of these islands, very, very engaging people for the most part. And they all enjoy having conversations about who they are and what they are to the world and what they've been to their region and to their country and to their people. And again, when we talk about the number of islands, just the mass number of islands, over 900,000 islands on the planet, only 16,000 of them are inhabited. It's a lot of islands, a lot of pieces of land sticking up out of the water where there's nothing on it but vegetation and animals. And then when you talk about how many people live on these islands, 730 million people, 11% of the total world population. So that, again, we talk about the size of the planet and how big it is, and sometimes how small it is. We use the phrase, it's a small world in context. But when you talk about 730 million people being 11% of the planet, of the total population, it's like, man, how many people live on this blue marble? Billions. There are billions of people. A few billions of people just live in China alone. So when you take in the continent of Africa, you take in the continent of North America, take in the continent of South America, there's a lot of people who live on this place. And in a day and time where the environment is being challenged, we got to be a little bit more conscious of taking care of the place that we call home. But it's fascinating to go out and just see these places and gather as much information as you can about them. So as you plan your vacations, go to some of the islands that you've never been to and ask questions. Ask questions. Talk it up, find out what's going on, and see what you might learn. And then bring it back and share it with your kids or your family members. And the one thing nowadays, since we have these phones that have cameras in them, you can take so many pictures of all the beauty that you'll find on these islands and just create an album. That's probably a lost art. Scrapbooks. somewhat of a lost art. Once upon a time, there used to be either scrapbooks or photo albums. Now everything is electronic, kept in the phone. But when you visit these places, take pictures of the interesting things and the fascinating things and the unusual things, and get the stories about them and bring them back. Because for most of us, we may never travel to those 16,000 inhabited islands. We may never get around to going to 3 of those islands, let alone 100 of them. But for you world travelers, you globetrotters who love to travel, you people who just, man, you can't sit still in one place for too long without having to go out. I urge and challenge each and every one of you to go out and explore and bring back some information for us to learn all we can about islands of the world. Again, 900,000 of them, 16,000 inhabited. That's a lot of land mass and 730 million people who live on these islands throughout the world. So, as we get ready to wrap up our show today, our topic has been island places here on the Kitchings Table. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings, and every Tuesday morning, we are glad to share what we have with you, our viewing and listening audience, here on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. As we get ready to move further into the fall season, we're going to continue to bring you some information about those things that, we get into fall. It's October now. You get Oktoberfest, you get Halloween, and you move into November. Of course, Thanksgiving, and then December is, Christmas. So this is the time of the year when the most traditional holidays are more prevalent, and we'll bring you some things about maybe those as we continue our shows here on WBISLP. We're always happy to identify things. Then when you look at things as we move forward from a political standpoint, we are getting ready for the elections next month for midterms, congressional and state offices. And we'll see how things get turned over going forward into this next election year, and bring you some more information about what's going on. So much in the world going on. Before we leave, we would like to send out our prayers, our concerns, and our thoughts to the people of South Florida in the Naples, Fort Myers region of the state of Florida, and just that swath going across the state of Florida from Fort Myers all the way over to the East Coast near St. Augustine, Daytona Beach. We send out our prayers to you. We know that the destruction and devastation that Hurricane Ian left behind, those communities may never get back to ever being what they once were. We're glad that the numbers of fatalities did not become a staggering number, but the damage in the billions and billions of dollars. And listening to a conversation about whether or not it's going to be permittable or make sense to build on these barrier islands with the global warming and the weather changing and these storms being more violent and everything being more volatile. Again, we have to think about the safety of each other. And then when you think about places like the state of Florida being at sea level, we don't think about it much, but the island of New York, or the peninsula of New York, whichever suits you, is not that high above sea level, and that was shown to you when Hurricane Sandy hit. So get ready. We're almost through hurricane season. It goes through November. Hopefully we won't get any more devastating hurricanes like this. They say Ian was one of the most devastating. It seems like they're getting more violent, and they have become more violent, but we just, continue to pray for those people in in the southwest part of Florida, and hope they can start regaining just a portion of normalcy back in their lives. That's going to do it for me today here on the Kitchings Table. Earl Kitchings saying, I hope you have a great week. Don't forget, stay protected. COVID is still with us. It's never going anywhere. I'll keep reminding you, you can kill bacteria, but you'll never kill a virus. And keep that in mind, no matter what you do. So until next Tuesday morning here on WBIS 106.9 LP FM Awesome Radio. Until next Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. Wishing you a great week. Stay safe. Show someone some love and do something kind and good for somebody else that you know of. Until then, we're saying bye-bye. Take care.